Donny Benét is here with us and on air. Hi, how are you?
Very well, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. What was the last music you listened to?
The last music I listened to, on the way over here, driving today, I was listening to Bob Seger.
Yeah.
I'm in a bit of a Muscle Shoals research thing at the moment, so I listen to lots of stuff, jazz, fusion, funk, soul, rock, classical, everything you name it. So, but today, yeah, Bob Seger, Main Street, that was the song.
I know that you mentioned a lot of elder artists and among your influences. How about the sound of 2024? Do you like any of the new production?
Not really.
Nothing? Nothing of it?
I'm just trying to think if there's anything I like. No, I can't think of it off the top of my head. It's really bad. Sorry. There's too much good music to catch up on first.
Yeah.
But nothing. I mean, like artists, like I guess, like Thundercat's always great. I'm just trying to really racking my brain. There's probably something I do like, but I can't think of it now.
I heard that first instrument you played was accordion, not the bass, but accordion. Is it right? Is it correct?
That's a bit of it was one of the first ones. Trumpet, piano,
and
then accordion. I had my parents are both music teachers, so they'd show me some things, or I'd pick up an instrument and work on it myself. So yeah.
But as far as I know, you played accordion in Italo disco band, or your father maybe did probably.
Yeah, that's a bit of a false story.
Yeah.
That was during the days of MySpace. I put the story up as a joke, and
So is that true?
But it is kind of true. My grandfather was an accordion player. My father is a keyboard and saxophone player.
Oh yeah.
My auntie's a piano player. My mother's a piano player. All my brothers are musicians as well. So music's always been around us. Maybe not Italo disco though.
Okay, so that's completely made up.
Yes, MySpace.
But it's a huge revival of Italo disco. These days, and a week ago, Pino D'Angio passed away. So, what do you think people still attract in this sound, in this aesthetic?
Italo disco obviously falls into that 80s music production where you've got very strong bass lines, very strong drum patterns.
Yeah.
Especially Italo disco with like Linn drum machines and 808 drum machines as well. I think there's also, my age, I'm 43 this year, so also the nostalgia is coming through and it's being revived quite a lot. A lot of people, I grew up being a kid hearing synthesizers all the time, so when I could afford to use them, I bought them, and that kind of, for me anyway, that's how it came back to it.
Yeah.
Very nostalgic and happy music.
Yeah. You play many instruments. Which one is the first one when you write a new song, new music?
Yeah, so it used to be, I would start with a drum pattern and then a bass line, and I kind of compose, I'll use like Pro Tools, and basically I'll muck around with some ideas, put some rough ideas down, and then build the song around that. Just recently I started playing live drums, and I also bought a Yamaha CP70 electric grand piano. And that's a very full sound, so I'll usually now start songs playing left-hand bass and a melody or some chords in the right hand, put down a rough idea, and then go to the acoustic drums. So it's changed a bit from before, but that's where I'm at the moment, I think.
You use a lot of analog gear and stuff and so on. And do you also like the emulations, the synth, VSTs, or just the hardware?
Just hardware, yeah. They always sound, I can always tell when they're a bit fake.
Really?
And they're too polished, and like a real Linn drum machine, the snare drum sampled with a little bit of noise in front of it, so it's always late. So if you listen to an old 80s recording and you hear a Linn drum, you can tell because it's like it's a little bit back. Everything, the new ones, everything's too perfect and it's too polished. They're great if you don't. And the other thing as well, which you don't. There's something nice about with synthesizers, grabbing the knobs, changing the opening, closing filters, changing resonance, all that. It just doesn't feel the same doing it through a soft synth, I guess. But having said that, they're very expensive instruments to get into.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, you could buy a Behringer, but I don't like those. But that for me anyway, I was very lucky to buy my synthesizers during the global financial crisis where the Australian dollar was quite high. So I looked at my dream list and bought everything. So, but yeah, I definitely prefer the real thing.
Which one is your most favorite? You have lots of Moogs in your songs?
I think the Prophet 5 is the king of synths. Mm-hmm. It just can do everything well. A Moog, Mini Moog is of course amazing. My Oberheim OB8 that's a really, really beautiful instrument. It's not as the Prophet 5 is still the best, but there's something that an Oberheim sounds like that nothing else does. So that's a very unique one. I'm hoping to get a Roland Jupiter 8 one day. I've got a Jupiter 6. Roland synths have a very specific sound as well, and then of course my drum machines. I did sell a whole bunch, so I've got a Lin LM1 and a Lin drum left. So yeah, I'm very, very lucky to have these instruments.
I agree.
When I don't use them, one day I will sell them for someone else to enjoy and create music on them, because an instrument should be used to make art, not just kind of collected and sitting there, doing nothing. So yeah, I'm very, very fortunate to be the gatekeeper of these instruments for the moment.
You said that your music should be soundtrack for a late 80s dining party or something like this. Why people still love these? Also, the 80s aesthetic, the sound, the huge reverbs.
Yeah, I think that comment was that would have been for the second last record I did, and I'd really gotten into a Brian Ferry record called La Bête Noire, and it was a really weird record because it's kind of not a popular one of his. It doesn't have all the big songs, all the big Roxy Music songs, but it's an amazing album. And to me, it sounded like something that would be playing at a New York Upper East Side dinner party or something. So I was kind of going for that vibe with that record I was working on as well. So, but I think with the big reverbs, like they're really nice spaces. That kind of production creates. I mean, now that it's funny because now you asked me today what I was listening to, and I'm going down a Muscle Shoals kind of path where it's very minimal and more organic sounding drums. Very, very big sounding basses, like a Fender Precision bass with flat wounds, that kind of sound. The 80s sound, at the time that I liked, I still do like it. Yeah, the reverbs, the orchestration, the arrangements of it, how the synths work in it. The synths are kind of creating pads or melodies or even just emotions and sounds within the composition. So I think that's a really good period of music. It's funny because people always give 80s music shit. And there's a lot of there's a lot of terrible 80s music, but there's a lot of really good, and that's the pinnacle of hi-fi. It's when studios were getting bigger desks, more channels. I mean, it did get a bit overboard. I think when the FM synthesis came in, I think that's when it started going downhill, because they'd say, "Oh, we don't need a string section anymore. We can just use a DX7, or we don't need brass. We can do the same on DX7." Kind of, some of it sounds cool, but there's that sweet spot in like 1980 to 84 before FM synthesis where it sounds amazing, I think.
So how do you see yourself, I don't know, in 10 years maybe? Will your music production move in time?
It'll evolve. I think it already has. Like the record I just put out has live drums, which was a big thing for me. My live band the drummer is my younger brother, and so I've always grown up being around drums, and I'd play his drums every day. And during COVID, I kind of skilled up and said, right, I'm going to learn how to play drums again. And took me about a year to get kind of okay at it. So it's good that I evolved then and I used drums and like the grand piano, and I used less synths. So not that I will use less synths in the future, but I think as you get older and more refined at what you do, you learn you use less. So it's like cooking. If you think of really great Italian or French cooking, there's barely any ingredients in it, but it takes a while to master how to use those ingredients, the right amount, how to put them on at the right time of the cooking process. So very much like music, you strip it back and you learn what works, how to use it, how much to use, what's the secret sauce, I guess.
The big part of your music, of your songs, is humor, fun.
Yes. Yep.
What comes first, like the joke or the song, and then you put the joke in?
Probably the song first, and then and it's kind of it's weird. It's like not it's not a joke like a slapstick. Like it's not like I don't want to do songs about farts. It's about if you take someone like an artist like Lou Reed, his songs are very funny in a very particular type of humor. How they use it, Leonard Cohen as well. Like I mean, I'm not for a second saying I'm any of those guys, but that's who I aspire to, of like using that high level of intellect to get something that's meaningful yet also playful and humorous. I mean, there's also a lot of great 80s Italo disco songs that are just the equivalent of fart jokes.
Yeah.
But so that's a good way of using it.
You were born in 81.
Yes.
So you grew up on a break of 80s and 90s.
Yep.
What music, what was the first record you bought, for instance?
Pardon me. I hated all the music that was coming out at the time. I think also my dad poo-pooed a lot of it and said, this is rubbish. So I listened to his records, which were a lot of soul, Motown stuff. Then as I became a teenager, could buy my own music, I really being a bass player, I took a liking to funk. The gateway was kind of, all the music my friends listened to that I liked was Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, it's as I said, it's a gateway drug into that. But then I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in the country. So when I would travel to the city for music lessons, I'd run to a record shop that sold secondhand records, and I'd buy up all of the Columbia jazz records from the 70s, so all the jazz fusion stuff. So I used to buy myself any Herbie Hancock, Stanley Clarke, George Duke, Weather Report, Jacob Astorius, all that period of music, that I guess you could, for lack of a better term, jazz fusion. That was all the first stuff that I bought. And then I went and studied jazz as a double bassist. So I bought a whole lot of piano trios, ECM music, Blue Note records. And since then, I buy everything and anything. So funk, some rock, a lot of ambient stuff, electronic stuff. I'm very, very varied listening.
Australian music at the time, it was lots of INXS and Kylie and Jason Donovans and so on. I loved INXS, for instance, also Kylie.
Yes.
So you were not into it?
I didn't appreciate it at the time. I mean, it was around. I didn't hate it. I just, as soon as I got a bass guitar in my hand at the age of 12, I just wanted to play like Larry Graham and Chic and that kind of stuff. So, which is funny because you go back and there's all that great INXS that's produced by Nile Rodgers, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
So, and then you go like, if you do a deep dive of Nile Rodgers' discography as a producer, it makes sense. All the Madonna stuff, like, oh, that's why it sounds good. Those guys are behind it as well. Like, they're good songs, but good production used.
I remember 15 years ago, maybe, there was a huge movement about modular records in Australia, these bands like the Presets and Cut Copy, maybe later the Avalanches and so on. So did you feel like the part of some like Australian movement at the time?
At that time, I was a very heavy jazz musician. I was from the age of 19 to maybe 30. I was predominantly a jazz musician. I did a lot of experimental jazz as well, but I wasn't into that scene, and I didn't. It wasn't the music community I was a part of. I know all those guys, some of them now. But yeah, at the time it wasn't on my radar. Nothing to do with me not liking them. I just wanted to play weird jazz music, or I wanted to move to New York and play with Chick Corea or Herbie Hancock, that kind of vibe.
Where do you see the future of the jazz music with current audience, with young people?
Well, that's the thing. It's tricky because I have a really close friend, and we're in a great improv band called Triosk, and we're both very, very listeners. And I think we always talk about like the current state of jazz. It's a tricky one because I think there's a few like I don't want to name bands and diss bands, but they're like student bands, which is great. But then there's a big gap in the history. I was really fortunate to do what's called a jazz apprenticeship with a lot of older jazz musicians. So I got that first-hand experience. All those guys have died now, and I think there's a big gap in between that. Because you had guys that were playing 7 nights a week, and the generation below them didn't get to do that. So now I feel like a lot of the jazz now is like a snapshot of what they think it is. It's like there's still some really interesting stuff out there. A lot of stuff on ECM that's great still. I mean, I don't actively listen to modern jazz anymore. it's funny, like if you ask her, I remember reading a really great jazz interview of a drummer, and they said, and they're like, what music are you listening to at the moment? It's like mine, because I'm trying to make my music. That's all I care about. I'm focused. So I'm not wanting to really go down that jazz road at the moment. So I'm kind of out of it. But what I do see of it, it's like, it's pretty naff, which is tricky because you have to, the audience has died out. So you have to attract a new audience, and you have to do it with a bit of substance as well, which I'm not saying none of them has it, but I think there's a lot of, like someone like, I'll name someone like Jacob Collier is like pretty gross. To me, that's like Instagram music, which I think that's the point my friend and I make, is a lot of stuff, because we as a society now, we have a shorter attention span. A lot of something has to grab you like that, and it has to be amusing and has to be virtuosic. And it's all those things, but lacks substance. And I feel like a lot of music, jazz music now, is like jazz for Instagram, which is like the exact opposite of what it should be. So, and then again, you still need an audience, because if a tree falls in a forest, that kind of vibe.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. I really enjoy your gig. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
If you like On Air, hit subscribe or like button.